Omnivore's Dilemma, reading 2, pages 40 through 45. Farm to Factory, Turning Bombs into Fertilizer. It may seem that I've given corn too much credit. After all, corn is just a plant. How could a plant take over our food chain and push out almost every other species? Well, it had some help from the US government. At the heart of the industrial food chain are huge businesses, agribusinesses. The same businesses that create new seeds provide farmers with the tools and fertilizer they need to grow lots of corn. Agribusinesses also need cheap corn from which they make processed food and hundreds of other products. To get the corn flowing and keep it flowing, agribusinesses depend on government regulations and taxpayer money. The government started seriously helping corn back in 1947. That was when a huge weapons plant in Missile-Shola, Alabama, switched over to making chemical fertilizer. How can a weapons plant make fertilizer? Because ammonium nitrate and the main ingredient in many explosives just happens to be an excellent source of nitrogen. And nitrogen is one of the main ingredients in fertilizer. After World War II, the government found itself with a tremendous surplus of ammonium nitrate. There was a debate about what the government should do with the leftover bomb material. One idea was to spray it in forests to help out the timber industry, but scientists in the Department of Agriculture had a better idea: spread the ammonium nitrate on farmland as fertilizer. And so the government helped launch the chemical fertilizer industry. It also helped start the pesticide industry, since insect killers are based on poison gases developed for the war. Chemical fertilizer was needed to grow hybrid corn because it is a very hungry crop. The richest acre of Iowa soil could never feed 30,000 hungry corn plants year after year without added fertilizers. Though hybrids were introduced in the 30s, it wasn't until farmers started using chemical fertilizers in the 1950s that corn yields really exploded. There goes the sun. Then George Naylor's father spread his first, when George Naylor's father spread his first load of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, the ecology of his farm underwent a quite revolution. Until then, the farm's nitrogen had been recycled in a natural loop. Legumes use the sun's energy to fix nitrogen in the soil. Other plants use the nitrogen to grow. Animals ate the plants, and the farmers recycled the nitrogen by spreading the animals' manure on the soil. But now the Naylors didn't need to produce their own nitrogen. They went out and bought it. The nitrogen for the fields would no longer be made with the sun's energy, but with fossil fuels. Farming was no longer an ecological loop, it was more like a factory. The farmers bought raw materials, seed and fertilizer, and turned it into a finished product, corn. Since there was no need for legumes to fix nitrogen, farmers could plant corn in every field every year. Animals and their pastures could be eliminated. Farming became much simpler, like a factory. The industrial farm produces just one product, or at most two. And like most factories, the industrial farm is powered with fossil fuels. There's a natural gas in fertilizers and the fossil fuel energy it takes to make the pesticides, the diesel used by tractors, and the fuel needed to harvest, dry, and transport the corn. And it all up, and you find every bushel of corn from an industrial farm requires about half a gallon of oil to grow. That's about 75 gallons per acre of corn. Some estimates are much higher. Here's another way to look at it. Calories, like the calories in food, are units of energy. On the industrial farm, it takes about 10 calories of fossil fuel energy to produce 1 calorie of food. That means the industrial farm is using up more energy than it's producing. This is the opposite of what happened before chemical fertilizers. Back then, the Naylor farm produced more than 2 calories of energy for every calorie of fossil fuel energy invested. In terms of energy, the modern farm is a losing proposition. It's too bad we can't simply drink the petroleum directly. It would be more efficient. The factory farm produces more food much faster than the old solar-based farm, but the system only works as long as fossil fuel energy is cheap. Nitrogen pollution. Hybrid corn eats up a lot of nitrogen, but farmers still feed it far more than it can possibly eat. In fact, farmers waste most of the fertilizer they buy. Many farmers put down extra just to play it safe. They say you only need 100 pounds per acre. I'm putting on closer to 180, Naylor explained to me a bit sheepishly. It's a form of yield insurance. But what happens to the 80 pounds of man-made nitrogen that Naylor's corn plants don't take up? Some of it evaporates into the air where it creates acid rain. Some of it turns into nitrous oxide, a gas that increases global warming. Some of the extra fertilizer seeps down to the groundwater, and because of this, the Naylors don't drink the well water on their farm. When I went to pour myself a glass of water in the kitchen, George's wife Peggy made sure I was using a special faucet connected to a water filter system. As for the rest of extra nitrogen, the spring rains wash it off Naylor's field, carrying it into drainage ditches. Eventually, it spills into the Raccoon River. From there, it flows to the Des Moines River and down the Mississippi and into the Gulf of Mexico. There, in a strange twist of nature, the fertilizer winds up poisoning the ocean. The flood of extra nitrogen causes a wild growth of algae, and the algae take up all the oxygen in the water, smothering the fish. The nitrogen runoff has created a hypoxic or dead zone in the Gulf that is as big as the state of New Jersey and still growing.